Today I'm not talking about landscape architecture, I'm talking about agriculture, and it's a bit of a shift change for me as a landscape architect training at Lincoln back in the late 90s. It's been really nice to see a few familiar faces in the room, but hopefully this presentation will resonate with some people around some of the big challenges we've got in New Zealand in front of us. So who is disrupting land use and how can New Zealand respond? In terms of a context, we need to understand some of the drivers globally and the pressures that are coming on a global stage, but also here in New Zealand. And the first being people and mouths to feed. Some of you may have heard the statistics around the projected increase of the global population to 10 billion by 2050, and that tension around how do we produce enough food to feed those mouths sustainably. Now, in response to that, there's a lot of startup companies, a lot of investment in technology-led food disruption. And some of those trends are on a spectrum between reducing our environmental footprint and reducing consumption of things like meat and milk, and we're seeing the rise of a lot of plant-based meat and milk alternatives. And then we go to the other end of the spectrum that's around scaling production to feed many mouths. In time, the ambition is that will be less expensive, and we're looking at cellular meats, lab-grown meats, and fermentation around proteins for milk. In the context of New Zealand, we can feed 40 million people, including ourselves. So putting that in context of the global population, that's half of 1%. So whilst we are an agri-dependent export nation, we're a tiny player. And as such, we need to focus on producing sustainably grown food, nutritionally dense food, over scale, because we just can't compete. We also only capture 15% of the in-market value of what we export. We export a lot of commodities. So the other focus is on creating high-value food products for export. So who is driving change in land use? And our view is it's global consumers that care. They care about the environment, they care about the future. They not only care about what we grow, but importantly, they care about how we grow it. And in New Zealand, that's going to have a big impact, and I really believe that New Zealand agriculture has not got their head around this. Instead of embracing it, there's a lot of pushing back. But we do have a comparative advantage in New Zealand. We have great soils, fantastic climate, we have water availability, great grower skills and research and development capability. We have a high reputation for food trust because of our production standards and our transparency, but importantly we have political stability. So when you layer these together, there's not a lot of countries that have all of those components, so we really do have something going for us. Now, this conversation, and some of you may have heard this, around New Zealand needs to be high-value niche products for global markets. I spent 7 years at Central Plains Water as the GM for Environment, setting up the irrigation scheme here in Canterbury before establishing Leftfield Innovation. And it was really evident that while that's an ambition, there's a real lack of action in that space. Who is enabling our commodity producers going from growing what they grow and transforming that into high-value food products for global markets? Who are those markets and where are they and what do they want? So Leftfield Innovation was established 18 months ago with a core purpose of developing sustainable land use for New Zealand growers. More options. Our team covers from the agronomer right through to the market. So we cover the technology piece, the science piece, sustainability, agri experts and food process. So we're able to undertake that end-to-end delivery. Our ambition is 100,000 hectares of sustainable land use. It's not of one thing, it's of mixed. That is creating that, asking the market, what do those global consumers that care want? Where are they? What are the attributes of the food they want, the form, the function? What can we grow sustainably that matches that? And then what high-value food products can we create and work with existing processes and links to market to get there faster? Our ambition is that will have a massive impact on the opportunities for farmers, environment, our economy, our community, and our country. So our disruption in this space First and foremost is our business model as a social enterprise. So we don't represent the dairy sector or the beef and lamb or any of those sectors, but we represent what's best for New Zealand and what's market-led, so it will be enabled. The social enterprise part is that through grant funding and various investments, we're able to continue to invest in the next innovation and opportunity for New Zealand agriculture. The second disruption is that we're market-led. So often, historically, New Zealand has just grown something because they can grow it well and then tried to find a market to sell it. That's not going to work going forward. We must understand those niche consumers that are prepared to pay a premium for sustainably grown food with traceability and undertake the work through the value chain with the farmers to meet that need. The third disruption is the value chain. It's a linear value chain. There are many participants who clip the ticket and erode value from the farmer. So we're redesigning the value chain to a value web and linking the farmer closer to the consumer. And finally, it's the transformation of the commodities into high-value food products that is critical. Farmer data. So in terms of technology, we see that what the farmers do on their land, how they grow their produce, is critical to meeting that expectation of that global consumer. Farmers already capture a huge amount of data for their farm environment plans that are required for regulatory use. However, there's no value economic value directly associated with that for the farmer. And we can flip that over and say, well, what does the global consumer want? Because their standards are actually so much higher than our regulatory standards. And if we can meet the expectation of the global consumer around impacts on water quality, nitrogen loss, water use, carbon footprint and agri-chemical use, if we can meet their expectations, then they're way ahead of the regulatory game. So we use the carrot rather than the stick. Farmers realise that that data is gold, and linking provenance to their farm through this data is the next generation of opportunity for them. So projects we have underway. Our projects are in two sort of main themes. The first theme is value capture. The second theme is value creation. We're focusing on value capture by saying how can we capture more value from the things that farmers currently can grow sustainably. This strategy means that we don't need a lot of capital investment from farmers to significantly change their systems. And given the economic climate right now, the economic envelope is very squeezed for agriculture. So we're saying we're working with ancient grains, milling wheat, and pulses with a farmer group, currently nearly 5,000 hectares across Canterbury and mid-Canterbury. It's only been established in the last 9 months. Relationship with a global milling company to develop high-value foods for global markets. So again, traceability underpins that, so provenance is a critical part of that initiative. Another initiative we've got, and a lot of this is around nutrient density, so we're looking at how can we export our water through vegetables to water-scarce countries or countries that don't have a significant agri-footprint with traceability. So we're looking at Australia, the Middle East and Japan. And finally, our value creation is around doing things a bit different, but that will require more capital investment in infrastructure on farm or processing capability in the sector. And this is where we're saying, well, how can we, for example, how can we unlock more value from water we're capturing for irrigation to grow other things before it's irrigated on the land? And one thing we're looking at here is on-farm aquaculture and also nutritionally dense water plants that can be transformed into high-protein food products for humans and animals. Now, when you're talking traceability from farm to fork, and you're going global with this, we need a language or a framework that is recognised. You know, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we're using the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, as a framework for communicating how we're tracking. So finally, how we're responding to the consumer pull requires us to undertake deep insight, market insight, and know those consumers, where they are, what they want, what is the form of the function and the attributes of that food, and look at what we can grow on our land that meet those attributes. And it will be potentially combinations of plant and animal raw materials. Using agri-tech, so sensors on farm to minimise inputs, create efficiencies, capture that data to tell the story, is critical to providing that evidence-based, high-value food product for global markets. The use of blockchain, augmented reality and virtual reality will be key tools in our toolbox to be able to convey the story going forward. Thank you.